You are now watching the True Mets Talk podcast live stream. We will be going live shortly. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.
Down the right field, stumbling start for Stewart. It's close to deep left field by Alvarez, and that's going to go in 4 straight games for the second time in he's homered in 4.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the True Mets Talk post-game live stream. I got my guy Nick back with me talking all things Mets baseball. We are here to talk about a 5-3 loss to the Texas Rangers in Game 3. Obviously, we got a lot to unpack here. Obviously, the Grimace era could be coming to an end. We don't know. Maybe more or less. I don't know. We'll talk about it. Anyways, Nick, how are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty well. You know, typically after a loss, I feel some type of way, but at the end of the day, you're not going to win them all. And we've been playing great of late. And there's some things that happen in tonight's game that I feel like can be cleaned up. And also some things that, made me feel pretty good coming out, even though it was an L.
Yeah, it was an L, 5-3, like you said. We are doing okay. Listen, this is a series win at the end of the day that we got to talk about against the defending world champions. It leaves a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth because the Mets were up in this ball game 3-1, thanks to a Pete Alonso go-ahead 2-run home run, and the bullpen kind of falters from there on out. We'll talk about Drew Smith and that performance. We'll talk about Sean Manaea here as well. But as always, make sure you hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you are new here, and keep dropping your live thoughts in the chat here. We'll get to them as well. And as always, make sure you subscribe to the He Did This To Me podcast as well. A lot of Mets talk, a lot of Knicks talk, a lot of New York sports talk, and just make sure you're subscribing to not miss out on that. But we're going to make this a very, very, very quick post game because, like I said, the Mets do drop this game 5-3. They were riding high into this game with a 7-game win streak. They are now, I guess, 7-1 in the Grimace era, as you can say. And Sean Manaea had a little bit of a weird start to me. And I'm not sure exactly what you make of this Sean Manaea start because obviously the first inning was an absolute train wreck, over 30 pitches in the inning. Didn't really seem to have it. But then after that, he kind of started to cruise a little bit. And then you get into that 6th inning where he runs into some trouble. So I'm very curious in terms of what you make out of Sean Manaea's start. Obviously, you can see his line here, 5 2/3 innings pitched, 2 hits given up, 3 earned runs, and 6 strikeouts. It was a very weird start to me, Nick. I don't want to say typical Sean Manaea start in terms of the actual first inning. The put away pitches weren't there in that first inning, and then he started to get into a rhythm. What did you see out of Sean Manaea in this start?
Well, the big story obviously is the first inning. And in the first inning, you see him missing the strike zone, getting himself into trouble. Then once he did that, he started to get squeezed a little bit by the blue. There was 1 3-2 call that went against him that I thought could have easily been called a strike. And then, that just compounded the errors that he had already made as far as, not being able to throw strikes. And at the end of the day, that's the biggest issue that Manaea sometimes has. But this time, as they said on the broadcast, that was the second time in his entire career that he's ever had 3 straight walks. So getting out of that with only 1 run, honestly, you feel pretty good about that. And then he did the thing that I have always looked for my starters to do, is that when you have a rough patch or maybe you don't have your best stuff, you figure out a way to grind and give us some innings. Now, sending him out there in the 6th inning, was that the best decision? I'm not one to second guess Mendoza right now. He's been pitching. He's been, calling. If he was a pitcher, he's been throwing all the right pitches as far as what he's been doing from the dugout as our manager. But I did last night, I was a little bit nervous, when he sent Severino out there to go up against Semien, who had hit a couple foul balls that were almost home runs just before, and it all works out. He gets the out, and he looks like a genius. Tonight, it looks like maybe he left Manaea in a little bit too long, but at the end of the day, it's hard to second guess, especially when you're always playing the result. Manaea overall, I thought he did enough to give us a chance to win, and the bullpen just unfortunately wasn't able to pick him up.
And let's just talk about that bullpen because, like I said, like Sean Manaea, we can talk about the star all we want to. He left this team in a position to win the ball game. Obviously, Sean Reed-Foley struggles a little bit, falters a little bit as soon as he gets into the ball game. But the primary sort of talking point here is Mr. Drew Smith in terms of giving up that go-ahead two-run home run. Listen, a lot of opinions about Drew Smith, a lot of opinions about this bullpen. We can talk about Mr. Daniel Nunez. He was definitely available. I'm not sure.
Are we sure?
Really
Because I'm a little bit nervous
do.
about the fact that he didn't pitch in 2 days, but then he wasn't inserted into the game. So are we, especially, I mean, he's been lights out. Are we sure he was available? I'm a little bit nervous. I think Deron said that earlier in the chat, and yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is like in hindsight, we can always talk about Daniel Nunez in terms of being available versus not available. He definitely was available. And if I have to guess, Carlos Mendoza was probably saving him for that 8th inning. And that's why Drew Smith was inserted into that 7th inning. But you know what? It kind of leaves a sour taste like in my mouth in terms of like watching Drew Smith go out there and give up those runs when you have a fresh Daniel Nunez to go out there and rely on. I know the bullpen management is going to be a crucial topic of this team. It has been a crucial topic and it will continue to be a crucial topic, but I'm very curious in terms of like what you think in regards to this bullpen management tonight, right? You have Sean Reed-Foley going out there, closing that inning when Sean Manaea gets pulled. But when you come out there in the 7th inning, what are you thinking when Drew Smith gets up onto the mound? Like, what is, I guess, the thought process there, especially having Daniel Nunez on rest? He's fresh. He's available. A lot of discussions about Drew Smith in terms of his execution in high leverage situations. And we see it tonight. Obviously, the Mets falter in a 5-3 loss. What are we thinking about that? And I don't really want to pin this on Mendoza because, like you said, he's been absolute nails in terms of getting the bullpen management right, the lineups right. And obviously, we'll talk about the offense here in just a second. I have a whole different slide about the offense, and especially after since you came onto the live stream a couple of days ago and talked about that sort of lineup switch up. But I want to talk about the bullpen management here for just a second. What do you think about that situation in terms of just entrusting Drew Smith in that 7th inning? You see, 1 inning pitched, 2 earned runs. He gave up a walk. Obviously, the go-ahead home run. We know Drew Smith has faltered, especially with that home run ball. What do we think as Mets fans just watching Drew Smith go out there for that inning?
Again, I don't think you can second guess Mendoza right there. I personally would have liked to see Nunez in that spot. That's what I thought was going to happen. That's what I wanted to see. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the bullpen, that is something that you have to take a step back and take a wider view and not make a judgment on a night-to-night basis. And this comes from a guy who, when it came to Buck, that was one of my biggest criticisms of him. So over time, I loved Buck, especially when he first got there and was high on him. But at the end, his management of the bullpen was the one thing that I was screaming, all right, man, this guy, it might be time to move on from him. Now, Mendoza tonight, he makes a move. It works out incorrectly. But at the end of the day, Drew Smith, we can talk about, high leverage situations. Has he not been that good? He's given up a lot of long balls. He's pitching under 2.5 ERA this season. He's been a solid bullpen arm for us. We brought him in tonight. He didn't get it done. That's what it is, you know? I mean, listen, Vientos has been getting it done. He was horrible at the plate tonight. This is baseball. As we know, there's going to be peaks, there's going to be valleys. I'm not going to kill Mendoza for that just yet, and I still do have faith in Drew Smith.
You do have faith in Drew Smith. Okay, all right.
I mean, he's got
That's
a 2.5 ERA on the season. Like, it's not like this guy has been stinking up. I got a lot more faith in him than I got in a guy like Ottavino. At the end of the day, he's pitched pretty well this season. He has some memorable late inning gaffes that we remember, but overall he's pitched pretty well. And if we want to do anything come close to sniffing a wild card and getting into the playoffs, we're going to need Drew Smith. Okay, we're going to need him to be someone we can rely on out of the pen. And at this point, he hasn't shown me anything that makes me feel like I need to totally give up on him.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always talk about this bullpen management in terms of who you're going to put into that 7th inning, 8th inning, leading up to Edwin Diaz. Obviously, you saw Reed Garrett go the night before. Adam Ottavino goes a couple innings in the game prior in game 1. So it was really kind of a question mark coming into the series in terms of how Mendoza was going to utilize this bullpen. Obviously, Sean Reed-Foley is another guy that a lot of people are confident in. He got the nod in terms of relieving Sean Manaea first up out of the bullpen tonight. But it's just like, it disappoints me, man. You see a go-ahead Pete Alonso home run 3-1. You see Sean Manaea go back out there. He struggles. Okay, it is what it is. Tie ball game, whatever. But for me, it's just like 3-3. We've been used to winning these games, right? And we talk about this stretch.
You got a short
And we
memory,
talk
CP.
about the quote unquote grimace era, right? And whether you want to make it out to be a McDonald's character or not, whatever, Mets fans will always cling on to something, right? In hopes of getting some good aura about this team and a good stretch. But it is what it is. This team has been playing great. And what have I always said in the pregame, even my postgame yesterday, the postgame before that, is that one loss is not going to derail that mindset for me. But it leaves a very bad taste in my mouth when I watch a loss like tonight, especially when you had a 3-1 lead after that Pete Alonso home run, because this could have been avoided. Now, I agree with you. You obviously entrust in Drew Smith in terms of these situations. You would hope that you can entrust in him in these situations. And the long ball has definitely plagued him. But I really don't know what the mindset was. And I really hope that the reporters, as we speak in the post game, are asking the proper questions in terms of what the mindset was, putting Drew Smith in the 7th versus leaving a Daniel Nunez who was on rest, was available, potentially saving him for the 8th, because that's the only thing that I can kind of come up with here. You put Drew Smith in the 7th in hopes that he puts up a 0, and then you put Daniel Nunez out there in the 8th inning to lead up to Edwin Diaz. But nonetheless, we're sitting here talking about a 5-3 loss. We can talk about the pitching. We can talk about whatever. At the end of the day, the 7-game winning streak is over. But you know what? That does not mean the Mets need to go back to playing bad baseball. We always talk about it. This does not diminish, and I just want to put this out there for everybody to talk about. This does not diminish what they have done to get themselves back into this wild card race, to get themselves back into the 500 territory, being 2 games under 500 going into tonight, and now 3 games under 500 after this game. It doesn't diminish anything that the Mets have done within the last couple of weeks. And I just wanted to sort of throw that out there. And I'm not sure if you agree with that or not, but a lot of people probably are losing their heads right now, right? A lot of Mets fans are like, okay, we lost a ball game. It's the end of the world. We're 35-38. What do you say to those fans, Nick?
I mean, everybody's got to take it easy, and everybody's got to not have such a short memory. I mean, people are saying things like, "Oh, we should have won that game." We're not too far removed from not feeling like the Mets should win any game. We were just hoping to show some life. So the fact that we were down, the fact that Pete is getting red hot right now, the fact that we were going up against an extremely shaky Blue. I mean, the umpire at home plate, I mean, both when it comes to Mania in the first inning and then Drew Smith, he got squeezed a little bit and maybe could have gotten out of that inning with a slightly more accurate umpire. And, putting all those things together, I still feel really strong and really good about this team. We still showed the ability to rally again in this game. And, like I said, Pete getting red hot is something that we should all be excited about. Lindor having a little bit of a dip, but, overall, the guy's not going to hit 350 forever. There's going to be dips. There's going to be peaks. There's going to be valleys. It's baseball. It's a long season. It's not the time to just be like, oh my God, like I can't, we just won. So it's just so typical of this fan base. And I'm a Knicks fan, a Jets fan, and a Mets fan. I get it. Okay. That's why my podcast is called He Did This to Me, because my father gave me all of those allegiances and I have to this cross to bear my entire life. But it's always, always, always just a little bit too, crazy when it comes to the reaction. We just won 7 straight. Okay. We're 7-1. We are 12-5 in our last 17. We have gotten ourselves back into position to be able to make a run and actually do something. We weren't even in position to do that. We had to make this run just to get to where we're at now. And now we're here. We got a chance to, have a summer where we can all be engaged and we can all think that we have a chance to maybe do something. And as we know, we saw with the team that we were just playing against with the Rangers, once you get into the dance in baseball, anything can happen. So I am not going to overreact. I would have loved to gotten this win. Anytime I sit down and invest 2.5 hours into something, I'd like to come out with a win. But you know what? It's been a lot more of those recently than it was for the first couple months of this season. So I'm not going to sit here and jump out of the window now.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree with you. Like I said, if you all are here in the live chat, make sure you're hitting that thumbs up, subscribing if you're new here. Absolutely. Keep hitting the live chat with your thoughts and comments. We definitely appreciate it. Thank you for being here in the post game. This post game is obviously talking about a loss. We are on the last couple of post games talking about wins. We were talking about the last post game that I did with you, Nick, in terms of actually manipulating the lineup in a way that could be more beneficial to more runs scored. And they have done a lot better. And we will talk about that here in just a second, because I know you got a lot of thoughts to talk about that in terms of Brandon Nemo, in terms of the overall just lineup in general with how they've been performing since you were last on here on the post game. Ricardo here, just want to shout out the chat real quick. Ricardo someone saying that Nunez had a sinus infection. We don't know if he was available truly or not. This makes a lot of sense if he was dealing with something. It makes a lot of sense that he didn't come into this ball game at that point in time. So this is something to watch out for in terms of the post games that, like I said, are going on as we speak in terms of Mendoza speaking and the players speaking. This is something to watch out for. Daniel's saying, relax. This is what I'm going to back up. Relax if you're a Mets fan. They are allowed to lose a ball game. It's about how they respond after this off day going into the Cubs series. Jeremy's saying Drew Smith equals Aaron Heilman. That's a name that I didn't think I would see for a very long time. Shout out to Jeremy. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, you can't call him Aaron Heilman. That's too much. That he does not deserve that. As somebody who was at game 6 and 7 in 2006 NLCS Mets versus Cardinals and watched Aaron Heilman throw that meat pitch to Yadier Molina that he put out, which led to Beltran looking at the dirty strike 3 hook from Wainwright. I was in the building in Shea Stadium for that. I was in the building when Andy Chavez made the catch. Aaron Heilman, as far as like Mets players, I don't know if there's anyone that I've ever his face, the way he looked, the fact that he always blew it in the big spot. Drew Smith, he does not deserve Aaron Heilman just yet. That's a bit much.
You hate the way he talks, the way he walks. Word to Kendrick Lamar. Honestly, at this point. B Stearns is saying we won the game, or we won the series. Be happy 100%. You always like a series win. This is what we talk about in the pre-games. Take game 1, take game 2, and the rest is a cherry on top. So the Mets win the series. And Thor is saying, I never blame the ump, right? We never blame the ump. But like you said, tonight, sometimes things are different. The umpire was a little bit shaky, to your point, Nick. Listen, at the end of the day, the pitching performance is what it is. Sean Manaea didn't have it to begin the game. He kind of strapped up a little bit, right? We always talk about Sean Manaea being a pitcher where you can rely on him for a solid 5 innings, maybe 5 1/3, but he'll never go the distance in terms of that 6th inning. He will never do it. Like, I'm not saying that he'll never do it, right? Because he's done it so far a little bit in a couple starts this season, but more often than not, when you have to predict a stat line from Sean Manaea, it's never going to be 6 innings pitched because he always struggles getting through that third time around the opposing batting order. He always struggles. And you know what? Tonight's another night where he goes into the 6th inning. It seems like he's like settled down, cruising, and he gets into some trouble. And it is what it is. And then you get Drew Smith or you get Sean Reed Foley at that point that closes out the inning. It's a tie ball game. And then at that point, it's the guy you see on your screen, Drew Smith. And that's who it was tonight. And that it just is what it is. Like, you can't change that, especially if Daniel Nunez is not available. Now, there's an argument to be made in terms of Adrian Hauser potentially being out there, but I think we can all agree that Carlos Mendoza has been pressing the right buttons throughout this entire team, whether it's the lineup, whether it's the bullpen. He's been pressing the right buttons, and we cannot fault him or this team for a performance like tonight, right? Like, we have to see how this team is going to respond after the off day going into Chicago. And we're going to talk about that here in just a second. But I wanted to talk about primarily here the offense, right? You got a lot of talking points here, right? You were preaching about lineup changes. This is the last time you were here, Nick, was when Nimmo was still in that 3-hole. We are talking about a loss to the Marlins in game 1 before they went on this stretch. And you were preaching lineup changes. You were preaching just a whole bunch of things about this offensive unit. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of a tangent here and let you go on a tangent in terms of what you've seen here recently with this offense that I know has only put up 3 runs in the ball game tonight, but has looked night and day different in terms of the at-bats that they're taking and the overall production that we're seeing.
Listen, it's clear that Mendoza watches the show and that he, when I have something to say, he listens. Because last time we were on, I said very specifically that I think Martinez needs to be moved into the 3-hole. I think that Alonso is a quintessential cleanup hitter. I'm old school. I don't like this, putting him in the 2 spot, more at bats, blah, blah, blah. No, Alonso is a cleanup hitter. Okay. He should be hitting cleanup until he stops playing baseball, and it should be for the New York Mets. And I asked for Nimmo to be put into the 2 spot. He's not a number 3 hitter. He's just not. He reminds me of LaDuca, if we want to go back to that 06 team, where he can take a pitch here and there to let a guy get a steal. He's mostly a contact hitter, high on base percentage. I love that as my number 2 hitter. It's more of a traditional lineup. Since we've gone to it, things have gone great. The entire offense has exploded. JD Martinez had a time where he could not be gotten out. And, Alonso's now starting to get red hot. Lindor continues to be much better since he's been in the leadoff spot. And Nimmo is stringing together multi-hit games every single night. Hey, every once in a while, a squirrel finds a nut. That would be me this time. On the other hand, Jeff McNeil, that squirrel can't seem to find a nut. Can't seem to find a hit. And it continues to blow me away how this guy who was a batting champion and was somebody that I would never think would ever hit below 280 in his worst year just can't get it done when it counts. And I don't know. I think that he keeps being given these opportunities. And I will say, when he turned on that one today, he did just miss it. I thought he maybe got that one, but he got a little out in front and got off the end of the bat. But I think that, as far as McNeil is concerned, because I know a lot of people are talking about him in the chat, I think that Mendoza's giving this guy a chance, man, because soon it's just going to be, listen, we can't continue to trot you out there. It's not like Iglesias is some world beater with the bat, but he's a fantastic fielder. Though Jeff McNeil has made some very, 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 very key plays in this stretch. But yeah, man, overall, the lineup, and I also think adding Alvarez back into the lineup means a lot. Vientos has been fantastic. He, was red hot. He had that little bit of fall off, which we see happen to him. And then he was able to string those 2-3 hit days back to back. And you feel like, okay, this looks good. And then when you go into this game, he did have some really tough at-bats, especially that at-bat in the ninth. That at-bat in the ninth looked like old bad Vientos, okay? And I'd like him to be a little bit better. And I thought in general tonight, we had a couple different instances where we didn't take advantage. When we scored that tying run, we then still had men on base. And I'm pretty sure Pete struck out. And then right after that, Marte, maybe he struck out. I just know that we had an opportunity to really tack on, and we didn't there. And there was at least 2 different times that happened. The one thing that I will say about Pete, we've seen certain games where he has a really uncompetitive at bat when it's really, really important, and it almost seems like that's in his head for the rest of the game. The fact that he was able to not only hit a home run, but hit a home run right center. Whenever you see Pete hitting home runs right centers, and when he's getting out in front of balls, he's still ripping them over the line for a double like he did with the game-winning hit last night, that's when you know he's really getting red hot. So that's something to look forward to.
And I always preach that, right? I have countless of debates with people talking about right field versus the pull side in terms of these hitters. It's all about pitch recognition. It's all about timing. And when Pete is on top of his game, whether anyone wants to acknowledge it or not, he is hitting that right center field gap. And we saw it tonight, especially with that home run. The power is there, 100%. Jose Iglesias gets the start tonight. We have to continue to watch how this team deploys the second base sort of starting duty, right? Whether it's Jeff McNeil or Jose Iglesias, whether it's Jeff McNeil being our everyday second baseman or analytics playing this platoon role between Jose Iglesias and Jeff McNeil. That is something that remains to be seen. But I do want to say, if you are here, make sure you hit that thumbs up on the stream. This is going to be a very quick post game. We're going to wrap up here in just a couple of minutes. Make sure you're hitting that thumbs up. We're going to be talking about this team, probably doing a roundtable tomorrow. We did the Amazin Mets pregame show tonight. Obviously, it's getting to the later part of this Wednesday evening here around 11:16 p.m. We are talking about a loss as well. It's never fun talking about losses as opposed to wins, but we are here talking about a loss in general with that streak snap. And make sure, please, if you are subscribed to my channel, subscribe to the He Did It To Me podcast. Get them to 300 subscribers. They deserve it. All things Mets, Jets, Knicks, and everything else in between. Make sure you are subscribing. But I definitely agree with you. You see the kids and doing what they're doing, right, in the first couple of games with Alvarez and Vientos. Obviously, having more quiet nights tonight. I think Pete Alonso, in terms of the offensive discussion, is the guy to talk about tonight. But the lineup in general, right, just didn't produce what they produced in the first 2 games, which is okay, right? Like I always say, it doesn't really matter if the Mets go 162-0. That's not feasible. It was never going to be feasible. They were never going to go whatever it was an 0 in the Grimace era. They were going to lose a ball game, whether it was tonight or whether it was in the Cubs series or the Yankees series, etc. They were going to lose a ball game, and it just so happens to be tonight, and we're here to talk about it tonight. How do they bounce back in the next game? And the offense and the at-bats that they're taking is still overall night and day different than what they were producing just literally 2.5, 3 weeks ago. And that makes all the difference in the world. So I just wanted to point that out. But yeah, 100%. They need to build off this. They need to build off this series win, because at the end of the day, we can sit here and talk about this game 3 loss. This is supposed to be a sweep. Everybody coming into here was expecting a sweep. This is still a series win versus the defending World Series champions in the Texas Rangers at their home ballpark. 35-38. Everybody wants to get back to 500. And that process starts on Friday against the Chicago Cubs. And we'll talk about that series here in just a second. But wanted to get to everybody in the chat here. Some good comments. Just wanted to sort of, I guess, prop up some comments here. How many Ks did Manaea have? Believe he had 6 strikeouts. Let me go back to the slide here for Darren. 6 strikeouts. So I think Peterson had 7 strikeouts in game 1. I think Peterson takes that poll that I had propped up in the live chat in game 1 in terms of most strikeouts for this series for starting pitchers. So shout out to Darren. Let's see here. Hauser looked good from the pen. Hauser has been looking good from the pen. This is a great comment because Hauser hasn't been getting his props. He has looked good from the pen. Listen, I said it a couple streams ago. At that point in time, 13 innings pitched, a couple earned runs to his name. He did not get it done at all in the starting pitching role. But in the bullpen, he's looked serviceable, especially when you need 2 to 3 innings out of the bullpen. Now, the Mets don't need that every single day, and that's where it's going to be a struggle to sort of find a consistent role for an Adrian Hauser. But he's at least looked better in his processes. Do you agree, Nick? Or are you kind of still wary of Adrian Hauser?
I love what I've seen from him so far. Obviously, as we know, especially in the bullpen, all it takes is one bad outing and everybody, hates you and your numbers are terrible. I mean, look at the response we're getting for Drew Smith. But, hey, man, I think he's looked much better. And, I look at it, we've had other guys. Mets have had success over the years with guys who are starters and are not pitching so well. I mean, going way back to Ali Perez, and there's been many more since then who weren't necessarily getting it done in the starting rotation. And then we figure out a way to be able to get some high leverage innings from them out of the pen. And I think that if he can give us that, then obviously that's a huge plus. I mean, we need him to give us something because he definitely was not getting it done, when he was starting out to begin games.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And I think Junior tossed in a comment here about Pete's relay throw.
That whole relay was trash. Marte missed the cutoff. Marte missed the cutoff first and foremost. Marte, you cannot miss the cutoff. If Marte hits the cutoff right there, there is zero chance that they score that run. That was a very, very big play. Marte has a strong arm and typically has an idea of what he's doing out there in the field, though I know you don't think he gets to all the fly balls he should. But and then that lollipop by Pete. I mean, Pete, he's really got to work on the throwing. Pete has definitely made strides when it comes to his overall game. His footwork around the bag, his ability to pick it is all much better than it was when he was, first coming into the majors. But he's got to get better at throwing the ball. He's a big, strong dude. He's got to be able to deliver a decent throw the few times that we ask him to.
100%. And honestly, I think that run scores anyways. Even if Pete Alonso does make a strong throw, I think the run scores anyways. But just the principle of it, and I think that's what Junior was talking about in his comment, was just the throwing in general from Pete Alonso, whether it's a relay throw right to home plate or whether it's a simple throw to second base off of a ground ball. Pete Alonso, his throws this season, they've been atrocious. And that's something that definitely needs to improve. 100%. Like, hands down, doesn't matter. That throw was an embarrassment tonight. So, like I said, it doesn't really matter because the run would have scored anyways. It doesn't matter.
A little leeway, though, just for, like you said, the run was going to score anyway. He's not even expecting the ball to come to him right there. And, Marte missing the cutoff was really when, that play began to go to shit. So I'm not going to kill Pete for that. But, yeah, that throw – I mean, that was my daughter plays softball, and she is 11 years old. And one of the most exciting plays they had all season, she played shortstop, was that where she threw a girl out at home, and they ran a much tighter relay than the Mets ran tonight.
100%. That needs to get better. Anyways, regardless, we can sit here and talk about the relays, whatever. It's a 5-3 loss. Quite simple. 35-38 in the season, 3 games under 500. Doesn't diminish, like I said, I'll continue to say it. It doesn't diminish anything the Mets have done for the past couple of weeks, but we're right back at it on Friday against a team that is right in the thick of things with the New York Mets in this wild card race in the Chicago Cubs, right? Jose Quintana versus Shota Imanaga in game 1. These are the game 1 probables. This is a road series in Chicago. Listen, I know that the Cubs have been kind of falling off a little bit, but their team in general just screams like scrappiness to me. So whenever the Mets play the Cubs, I always worry a little bit because they always seem to play down to the Chicago Cubs. On paper, I'm going to take the New York Mets all day. But I always have a little bit of a hard time in terms of envisioning a series against the Chicago Cubs, especially against the starting pitcher that I really wanted the New York Mets to sign in the offseason in Shota Imanaga. Obviously, he chose to go to Chicago on a very unique and unusual contract. That's besides the point, but he's been having a spectacular season. So before we round things out here, what are your expectations, right? As the Mets are 35-38, going to Chicago against a team that is directly in competition with the Mets for a wild card spot, what are your expectations for this series?
Like you said, if you're a Mets fan and you have a memory, you can remember the Mets playing down and losing to the Cubs in many different seasons with many different cast of characters when it felt like we should be a better team than them. And the Mets, let's not get it twisted. I know we just won 7 straight and we're feeling good about ourselves. We're not a team where we should be going into anything saying we should beat this team. Okay. We're just not. Talent-wise, we're not. And overall resume, we're not. But when you look at this particular series, with the way that we have been swinging the bats here recently, and with there being 2 earlier games in Wrigley, which we know if the sun's out, the ball tends to fly there a little bit. I think this could be an opportunity for our offense to continue to get it going and pour on some runs against these guys. Now, Quintana, he makes me nervous sometimes. Okay. There's times where I look at him and I'm like, yo, this guy, he could really do something. He could really be a big piece. But then there's other times where he seems to just let it get away from him. But that's kind of the story of all of our starters this year. Like, nobody's been dominant. Everybody showed some flashes. I mean, you want to talk about McGill, you want to talk about Peterson. A lot of guys have been solid. They've all been, honestly, a little bit better than we expected. We thought that was going to be one of the biggest holes in our overall team, was going to be that starting pitching this year. But they've all been a little bit better than we expect. And you kind of feel like you're going to get a decent outing from just about anybody, but you're not going to ever get really a dominant outing from anybody. So it's going to be about that relief pitching. When it comes in, are they able to hold us? And offense, we're playing, like I said, in Wrigley. Daytime, ball's going to be flying. We need to put some balls in the seats. Okay, we need to, not just not string a bunch of singles together, and that's all fine and good. But in today's baseball, especially in those conditions, we're going to need to hit some long balls.
Yeah, 100%. Whether it's in the gap for extra base hits, which is what I always preach, just literally hit the ball in the gap, or whether it's in the actual seats. 100%. I agree with you. They are going to come out swinging. 100%. I really do think this Cubs team is a lot better than what they've been producing here as of recent. And I'm not sure if the Mets are just getting these teams on their downward swing, like the Padres here recently, and getting the sweep, getting the series win versus the Rangers. A Cubs team that's faltering here. We can only hope that you win the series, but this is going to be sort of a test for me, right? As a Mets fan, in terms of how I view them stacking up in this NL wildcard race that has so many teams right there in the thick of things with them. So, as Jose is saying, right here, which is a completely new talking point because today, long-time New York Met Tomas Nido actually got picked up by the Chicago Cubs, and we might actually see him in this series. The Mets will have to face Tomas Nido playing for the Cubs, and he knows the Mets very well. So I guess they DFA'd Yan Gomes, picked up Tomas Nido. Best of luck to him. That's something to watch out for. But I'm very actually just confident. Every single series the Mets go into right now, I'm confident because this Mets team has nothing to lose. There's nothing to lose for this organization in this year in 2024. There's no expectations set. The expectations are actually quite low. And a lot of people are surprised. Whether you want to toss it up to Grimace, whether you want to toss it up to just better play in general, it doesn't matter. This team in recent weeks to fight from 13 games, 14 games under 500 to cut it to 35 and 38 and a half a game out of the wild card going into tonight, maybe a game and a half after tonight, doesn't really matter. This team has been outperforming expectations. There is no pressure on this team. Why should there be pressure on this team? Because there are no expectations. Continue to go out and win series like they have over the last, 4 series in a row or 3 series in a row, and good things will happen. These bats will continue to come to life. I've been loving what I've been seeing out of this approach. And you just got to make the right bullpen moves. And like G Money was talking about in the comment section, there was some sinus issues going on with Daniel Nunez. He wasn't available. We got all that. 100% agreed with you. I was coming into the stream just asking myself why he wasn't an option, especially early on where in the inning where Drew Smith kind of faltered there. But in hindsight, you understand that there's a lot of things that us fans don't pick up on during the game. We don't know who's dealing with what because some of these reports just don't come out to the public. So until after the fact, obviously. So 100% carry this momentum because guess what? Even after a game 3 loss, this Mets team should still have momentum. I always think about a sweep like a cherry on top. A series win is what you really go for, and the Mets got it in the first 2 games, and the sweep would have been a cherry on top. We got it against the Padres. We didn't get it against the World Series champs or defending World Series champs in the Texas Rangers, but you got to carry that momentum into Chicago and continue to win on the road, which the Mets have done a pretty good job of here in 2024. So final thoughts, Nick, about this team, about the game that we saw tonight, about the state of the New York Mets. Final thoughts, and we'll wrap things up.
Like you said, there is nothing to be ashamed of. We have no expectations, and we need to learn to enjoy this while it is good. I mean, right now we are 7-1. We have Lindor being a real leader for this team. We have Pete stepping up and getting red hot and driving in runs. JD Martinez is an absolute professional hitter, veteran guy. Alvarez is coming back and becoming the key, the spark plug that we need. CP, I know we do Knicks. Think about this when it comes to Alvarez, okay? 17-2 now with him in the lineup this season. He's an impact player on both ends who, when he comes in, he brings a certain energy and takes the entire team to a certain level and makes everybody slot into their more natural position. Remind you of anybody? A Mr. OG Anunoby? Very, very similar through lines between the two of those and how they affect our teams. Vientos is still raking. Nimmo is made for the 2-hole. Marte's been solid. Sugar is back. McNeil still sucks, but McGill and Peterson have been solid. Nito's on the Cubs. We'll figure it out. Listen, like my man, I think it was Ricardo said, let's go 4-2. on this road trip. Yeah, let's go 4-2 on this road trip, and let's get to Sunday Night Baseball, hopefully get a win and have some juice going into next week when we go against the hated Yankees. Hey, man, a lot to be thankful for right now. As far as these Mets are concerned, I'm thankful that they're giving me something to be involved and be, engaged with as the summer and the dog days continue. Let's go Mets.
100%. And I love that OG Anunoby sort of reference because a couple of reports coming out about OG Anunoby. I was going to actually hit you up in terms of actually talking about those said reports, those rumors. We'll talk about that potentially in a podcast. If you're a Knicks fan, make sure you all are checking out the channel in terms of the True Knicks Talk podcast. Obviously, Nick and I always doing Knicks content together. We got a lot to talk about in that regard. But a lot of people here, Ricardo and MEZ, these comments actually flow together. And I love those final thoughts as well from you. 100% agree with you. Ricardo's saying, Stearns potentially sneaking ahead of the deadline and getting some high impact bullpen arms, and MEZ basically following up and saying, I still want another lefty in the bullpen. This is exactly the sort of situation that I see the Mets falling in because you have Christian Scott still in the minor leagues. I think that worst case comes to worst, Ricardo, whether they ever go into the deadline, right, and try to seek another bullpen arm out from another team, you have bullpen arms in the starting rotation that are able to be transferred over, that have had recent success in the bullpen, especially with a different team in the San Francisco Giants in Sean Manaea. This start tonight was good enough, but is it good enough for him to remain in the rotation and for the Mets not to pull him out of that spot and go into the bullpen? That's something that remains to be seen. But like I said, 35-38 on the season so far after this 5-3 loss in Game 3 against the Texas Rangers. As always, appreciate you all being here with Nick and myself. Hit that thumbs up on the stream if you haven't done so already, whether you're in the live chat, whether you're catching the replay. Subscribe to the channel. Almost to 800 subscribers on the channel. Help me get there. I believe I'm about 7 or 8 subscribers away. Please hit that subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button on the Heed to This To Me podcast as well. That is where you can find Nick talking Mets, Knicks, and Jets with his pops. All on the Heed to This To Me podcast. Appreciate you all being here. Like I said, let's go Mets. This is a win that puts things into perspective, that not everything is going to always go our way as Mets fans. And we all know that already. If you're a Mets fan, you already know that. But one thing is a fact. Good teams mitigate bad stretches and they limit bad stretches. And that's something that this team, with as high as they have been riding, cannot afford to go down that path and have another bad stretch. Go back out there on Friday, fresh series, Game 1, Quintana versus Imanaga, and get the W. This has been the True Mets Talk post-game show. Appreciate you all in the chat. Like I said, thank you for the support. Hit that thumbs up. Nick, thank you so much. We'll have you back on here. We'll talk Mets baseball soon. We're going to be talking Knicks basketball in the offseason, so make sure you check that out. And as always, let's go Mets. Peace.
Thank you for watching the True Mets Talk podcast. Make sure you're tapping on that notifications button and checking out all the